The sun was setting over the small town of Brookhaven, casting a warm, golden glow over the streets. The day's heat was beginning to fade, leaving behind the soft, cooling breeze of evening. On this particular evening, everything felt serene, as if the world was taking a deep breath before the night arrived. Lila, a young girl of about 12, was out for her usual walk. She had always loved the quiet streets of her neighborhood, where the houses stood like old friends, and the trees whispered secrets to one another. But that day, something felt different, like the world was nudging her towards something she couldn't quite see yet. Lila's favorite route took her past the old town square, a place that seemed to be stuck in time. The cobblestone paths, the ivy-covered benches, and the gentle murmur of the fountain at the center of it all made it feel like something out of a fairy tale. Every day, without fail, she would stop by the fountain to watch the water dance in the sunlight, its trickling sound like a lullaby that calmed her mind. But as she approached the fountain that day, something caught her eye, a small, frantic movement near the edge of the stone basin. Lila slowed her pace, her curiosity piqued. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw it, a tiny, trembling kitten, its fur soaked, struggling desperately to stay afloat in the shallow water of the fountain. The kitten was small, no older than a few weeks, and it was clearly terrified. Its tiny paws scrambled in the water, trying to find purchase, but the slippery stone around the fountain offered no help. It mewed weakly, its cries barely audible over the sound of the water, and Lila's chest tightened with instinctive worry. She stepped closer, her eyes never leaving the little creature. The kitten's tiny body was slick with water, and its fur clung to its bones. Its little face was filled with fear as it paddled helplessly, the water slowly rising around it. Lila's mind raced. She knew she couldn't just stand there. She had to help it. But how? The stone walls of the fountain were too high for the kitten to climb out on its own, and if Lila reached in, she was afraid the kitten might panic even more. The situation was becoming dire, and the fear of what might happen next settled heavily in Lila's stomach. She glanced around quickly, but the square was deserted, the usual crowd of tourists and town folk long gone for the day. There was no one nearby to help. She was alone in this moment, and the weight of that responsibility pushed her forward. Without thinking, Lila dropped her backpack to the ground and stepped closer to the fountain. The kitten's frantic mews grew louder, and something inside her snapped. It was a feeling she had experienced before, but never so strong. Her heart was racing, her body filled with purpose. She knew she had to act quickly. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the stone basin. The water was cold, much colder than she had anticipated, but she didn't flinch. The kitten was almost too weak to struggle anymore, its tiny body barely moving. She had to get it out before it was too late. Lila took a deep breath and reached down into the water, her hands trembling slightly from both the cold and the pressure of the moment. The kitten's eyes locked onto hers as she gently scooped it up, her heart hammering in her chest. The little creature seemed to relax just a little in her hands, its tiny body still shivering but no longer fighting the current. "Don't worry," she whispered softly, her voice full of calm reassurance, though her own hands were shaking. "I've got you." But as she pulled the kitten out of the fountain, something unexpected happened. The sudden motion caused the kitten to cough violently, its tiny body racked with convulsions as it tried to breathe. Lila's eyes widened in fear. Was it too late? Had the kitten inhaled too much water? The panic surged in her chest, and she held the kitten tighter, unsure of what to do next. She could feel the kitten's tiny heart pounding against her palm, and she knew she had to act fast. The kitten was still alive, but its little body was too weak. Lila had to get it warm, had to stop the shivering. She needed to take it home, to dry it off, and to make sure it was okay. But she knew one thing for sure now, she wasn't going to let the kitten go. No matter what it took, she would keep it safe. Lila's mind raced as she cradled the tiny kitten in her hands, her heart pounding with worry. The little creature's body was still trembling from the cold, and she could feel the sharp beat of its heart against her palm. She looked down at the wet, fragile thing and realized with sudden clarity that there was no going back. She wasn't just going to leave it here, not after what it had been through. Not after what she had just done. Her first instinct was to run home, to get inside where the warmth of the house would help the kitten recover, but the reality of the situation quickly settled in. She was still standing at the fountain in the middle of the square, and her house was a few blocks away. Every second counted, especially with the kitten's tiny, fragile body. She glanced around, but there was no one nearby, just the stillness of the evening and the faint echo of distant footsteps. No one had witnessed her rescue. No one had seen the desperate struggle in the fountain. The little kitten, still wet and shaking, let out a weak, pitiful mew. Lila glanced down at it, her heart aching at the sound. She gently cradled the kitten closer to her chest, her coat pressed tightly against its trembling body. She could feel the warmth of the little creature slowly returning, but it wasn't enough yet. The kitten needed warmth. It needed help. Without a second thought, she began walking briskly toward her house. Each step felt heavier with the knowledge that the kitten's life rested in her hands now. She could hear its soft mews growing quieter as it calmed down, but the weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. The streets of Brookhaven were quiet, save for the occasional rustling of wind in the trees. The town square, once bustling with life during the day, was now a ghost town. Lila hurried along the cobblestone streets, the kitten nestled against her chest, both of them trying to escape the night's chill. When she reached her front porch, Lila quickly fumbled for her keys, her hands cold and stiff, but her determination stronger than anything else. She unlocked the door and rushed inside, the warmth of the house enveloping them both. The kitten mewed weakly again, and Lila closed the door behind her, letting out a sigh of relief. She had made it. Her mom was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The house smelled of roasted vegetables and fresh bread, but Lila couldn't focus on any of that. Her mind was consumed by the tiny life in her hands. Her heart raced as she walked toward the kitchen, the little kitten still curled up against her chest. "Mom." Lila's voice was full of urgency, but also quiet, as if speaking too loudly would break the fragile moment they were in. Her mom turned, her eyes widening as she saw the tiny kitten in Lila's arms. "Oh, honey, what's this?" "I found it," Lila said, her voice trembling slightly. "It was drowning in the fountain in the square. I couldn't leave it there. Mom, it's freezing and wet. I don't know what to do." Her mom stepped forward, wiping her hands on a towel. "Let's get it warmed up first," she said, her voice soft and calm. "Put it on the couch, and I'll grab a blanket. We need to dry it off gently and make sure it's okay." Lila nodded, her heart still racing, as she gently laid the kitten on the soft fabric of the couch. The kitten was still shivering, its little paws tucked under its body. Its eyes were wide and scared, but it was no longer struggling, just exhausted. Lila sat beside it, watching as her mom hurried around the kitchen, grabbing a soft towel and a small heating pad from the cabinet. The warmth of the house, combined with her mom's calm, was a relief. Slowly, she began to feel like maybe, just maybe, the little kitten would be okay. Her mom wrapped the kitten in the towel, gently patting it dry, while Lila ran to grab a small bowl of milk. "Do you think it's okay?" she asked, her voice full of worry. "Will it survive?" Her mom smiled softly, sitting beside her. "It's too early to say, but it's a good sign that it's not shivering as much. We'll make sure it's comfortable tonight. It's going to need rest, and then we can think about what to do next." Lila looked at the kitten, now wrapped snugly in the towel. Its eyes were half closed, but there was a small spark of life in them, a quiet understanding that it was safe for the moment. But Lila's heart still ached. She couldn't stop thinking about how small and vulnerable the kitten had been in the fountain, how it had looked so lost and alone. She glanced at her mom again, a small thought forming in her mind. "Mom," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "can we keep it?" Her mom's gaze softened, and she smiled gently. "Let's just see how it does tonight. If it's still doing well tomorrow, we'll talk about it." Lila nodded, her heart swelling with hope. She knew she had to make sure the kitten would be okay first, but deep down, she felt a sense of certainty. The kitten had found a place to belong. And so had she. As the hours passed and the kitten began to settle, Lila stayed close, watching it rest peacefully. The world outside had grown quiet, the night deepening, but inside, there was warmth. Lila's thoughts drifted to the future. What would happen to the kitten? What could she do to make sure it was happy and healthy? She had no answers yet, but one thing was certain, she wasn't going to let the kitten face the world alone anymore. She would be there, just as the kitten had been there for her, in the most unexpected, life-changing way. The following morning, Lila woke up with a start. She sat up quickly in bed, her eyes still heavy with sleep, but there was no mistaking the feeling that stirred inside her. She had a mission. Without wasting another second, she slipped out of bed and ran downstairs, her heart pounding in her chest. As she reached the living room, she saw it, the kitten, still wrapped in the towel, now resting comfortably in a small, makeshift bed Lila had set up next to the fireplace. The little creature was no longer shivering, and its tiny chest rose and fell in soft, steady breaths. Lila knelt down next to it, her fingers gently brushing its soft fur. The kitten stirred slightly but remained relaxed, a good sign that it was recovering. Lila smiled to herself, relief washing over her. It had made it through the night. The kitten was going to be okay. Her mom appeared in the doorway, holding a steaming mug of tea in her hands. She looked over at the kitten, then at Lila, with a soft, knowing smile. "It looks like it's feeling better," she said quietly, her voice warm. Lila nodded, her face lit up with happiness. "It's not shaking anymore, Mom. I think it's going to be okay." Her mom set the mug down on the table and walked over to the couch, where Lila was now sitting beside the kitten. She knelt down to get a closer look at the little creature. "You did a good thing, you know," she said softly, her eyes meeting Lila's. Not many people would have risked so much for a little kitten they didn't even know. Lila's cheeks flushed with pride. "I couldn't just leave it there. I couldn't let it drown." Her mom smiled and gave her a gentle hug. "I'm proud of you, sweetie. You followed your heart." Lila's heart swelled with emotion, but her thoughts kept returning to one question. What would happen next? What was going to become of the kitten? She didn't want to just let it go, not after everything they had been through together. It had been lost, stranded in the fountain, struggling for its life, and Lila had been there to pull it out of the water. She couldn't just let it slip away. "Mom," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can we keep it?" Her mom paused for a moment, her eyes softening. "We'll talk about it, but you know that taking care of a pet is a big responsibility, right?" Lila nodded eagerly. "I know. I'll take care of it. I promise. It doesn't have anyone else. I can't just leave it to fend for itself." Her mom gave a small, thoughtful smile. "All right, let's see how it does today. If it's still doing well and you're serious about taking care of it, then we can talk about making it a permanent part of our family." Lila's heart raced. She felt a rush of hope fill her chest, but she didn't want to get ahead of herself. She needed to show her mom that she was responsible enough to care for the kitten. She would do whatever it took. The day passed slowly, with Lila by the kitten's side, making sure it had enough food and water and that it was warm. The kitten seemed to be growing stronger with each passing hour, its eyes becoming more alert, its movements more lively. By the afternoon, it had started to play with a small ball of yarn Lila had given it. It batted it around with its tiny paws, and Lila couldn't help but giggle at how adorable it was. As the evening drew near, Lila's mom called her over to the kitchen. She was standing near the counter, a soft smile on her face as she looked at the kitten, which had settled into the cozy corner of the living room. "Well," her mom began, turning to Lila, "it looks like you've done a great job taking care of it so far." Lila's heart skipped a beat, and she held her breath, waiting for her mom to continue. "I think," her mom said with a warm smile, "you've earned the right to have a new friend. The kitten can stay." Lila's face lit up with joy, and she rushed over to her mom, throwing her arms around her in an ecstatic hug. Thank you so much." Her mom laughed, hugging her back. "You deserve it. You're going to be a great pet owner." Lila's excitement bubbled over, and she ran back to the living room to tell the kitten the good news. It was still curled up in its little bed, but when it heard Lila's voice, it perked up and looked toward her with bright, curious eyes. Lila crouched down beside it and whispered, "You're safe now. You're home." The kitten mewed softly, nuzzling her hand with its tiny head, as if it understood. Lila's heart swelled with emotion, and in that moment, she realized just how much this little creature had already become a part of her life. In the weeks that followed, the kitten grew stronger and more playful. It became a fixture in Lila's life, always following her from room to room, curling up at her feet as she did her homework, and playing with her when she needed a break. The bond between them deepened with each passing day, and Lila knew that she had made the right decision. The kitten was no longer the helpless, shivering creature she had pulled from the fountain. It was now a beloved member of the family. And as Lila looked down at her little friend one evening, curled up beside her on the couch, she realized that sometimes the smallest moments, like rescuing a kitten from a fountain, could change the course of an entire life. In that moment, she knew that this was just the beginning of an incredible journey, one filled with love, responsibility, and a friendship that would last forever.